Hey everybody, today I'm going to be reviewing David Icke's latest book called Remember Who You Are. Remember where you are and where you come from. Remember. It's published at the beginning of 2012, so it doesn't cover what's been going on this entire last year, including all the scandals with the military, the scandals with the IRS, with with their Tea Party, and the Benghazi thing and stuff like this. A little bit of information for people who have never read anything by David Icke before. He's kind of considered a conspiracy theorist. To those that have read multiple books by him, or kind of like have seen his talks or anything like that, he's not really a conspiracy theorist per se, but it's understandable why he would kind of get put in that category. He's mainly a dot connector. He does just copious amounts of research, and he just connects all the dots, whether they're right or wrong, whether you agree or disagree with him. He makes a lot of sense in a lot of what he says. One of the main things that people don't seem to really get behind with him is he's one of the proponents of the reptilian conspiracy, that those that are high in power, like George Bush and Tony Blair, and the people that own the banks and that own basically that run the world, essentially the Bilderberg Group and the and whatnot, that they're all shape-shifting reptilians. He does a really good job of explaining why he believes that, and given the nature of reality, there's been tons of books written about how the universe is holographic, and how that's the whole idea behind reflexology, is that every piece contains the map of the whole thing. Even Incubus had a lyric in one of their songs about that. So the idea that the universe is holographic is not entirely new, and he uses that and talks about how the way that they manipulate our perception of reality, given that it is holographic and energetic and whatnot, can make them look normal, and we would perceive them as just being normal, but they're in fact reptilians behind the scenes. He also does a really good, thorough history of religions, and how most religions are kind of based off from either reptilian worship or Saturn moon worship, stuff like that. That's one of the other big themes running through at least his last two books, is the moon matrix, and how the moon isn't real. It's not a natural satellite, and if you really consider the math of the moon, and its distance and its size, and its just how it even got there, most people don't even consider that. They're just like, the moon's there, it's been there ever since forever, so whatever. It may or may not be true, who knows. There's really no way, just because we don't openly have the technology right now to hollow out a moon and use it as a spaceship and go invade another planet and kind of control a planet with it, doesn't mean that no other civilization does. That's neither here nor there, though. So that's one of the big themes running throughout his book, what he calls the Saturn moon matrix. In his last book, called Human Race, Get Off Your Knees, he didn't really talk about the Saturn thing that much, but he kind of expounds upon that more. One of his other main themes throughout his books, at least the ones that I've read, are the bloodlines. You've heard of the Illuminati, you've heard of the Knights Templar. The Da Vinci Code has been really good about kind of bringing that thing to the forefront, to the mainstream. So he talks a lot about that, about the people in power staying in power based on their bloodlines to keep the genetics pure. He also talks a lot about the Rothschild Zionists. Before I read any of his books, I just figured Zionism was, Hebrews trying to get back to Israel or whatever. But you kind of learn that's not exactly what Zionism is. He talks a lot about the history of Israel and Palestine, and the Jewish people as a group, their history, and their history with Germany and with Israel. So it's really, really fascinating. The other thing about his books is he has a lot of this type of art. This is by Neil Hogg. There's an entire gallery throughout the middle of the book with all of it, and really, like, I'm a big fan of Alex Grey, the guy who does, you know, he's got lots of his own books, and he does the artwork for Tool. He's really talented. Neil Hogg is talented, but he's like the poor man's Alex Grey. I don't know what their ages are, but he's kind of, his skills aren't as refined. But it seems like Neil Hogg draws and creates more for a political purpose than Alex Grey does. Alex Grey seems to be more about awakening consciousness, and even though that's what most of Neil Hogg's things are about, given that he works with David Icke, he, like, a lot of it, like, you can see like pictures of current events and flags and stuff like that. So that's another thing with for those of you who've never, like, read a David Icke book. Another thing, he's got just copious amounts of pictures within the book. My problem with the artwork in the book is it's all really, really cheesy. For instance, I'll give you that one right there. See, like, you know, and anybody that he wants to demonize, anything that he wants to demonize, he'll make it look evil, or he'll make it look bad. It's just kind of, it's almost, it's to an unnecessary extent. Like, here's an example right here. You know, he just tries to cram too much influence, or he just tries to cram too much down your throat with each of the pictures. Now, I don't know if those photoshopped photographs are David Icke's idea, if he creates them, or if Neil Hogg works with him, or, you know, who does the illustrations. So David Icke has got a lot of negative reviews over the years, and it's really understandable why, and he's well aware that he's getting negative reviews and that people don't like him, and that he's got a lot of detractors and whatnot. So again, if you read one of his books, you'll understand why. But try. I really hate to say this, because given that I don't know exactly how the world works, and that I don't know what goes on behind closed doors at Goldman Sachs, and, you know, what happens in the White House, and what happens in you know, whatever, you know, Buckingham Palace, or wherever you know, wherever the other leaders of the world meet. I don't know, so I can't say for sure. But I would suggest, if you can look past the crazy, and I hate to put it like that, if you can look past the reptilian stuff, all that stuff, you can get a lot of good information from a David Icke book. Unfortunately, a lot of it is kind of hinged on the fact that it's a reptilian alliance that's trying to take over the world, because they feed off our negative energy, and they need us to be slaves and drones to bring them more money and you know, be unhappy. So that negative energy feeds them, pretty much. Which there's a little bit of a disconnect in there too, because according to David Icke, their plans are to cull the population, to reduce that population by half, or down to 500 million, or just an incredibly small amount compared to what's on the Earth right now. And that would kind of not make sense if negative energy is what feeds them, because you think the more people there are, the more unhappy people there's going to be, the more wars, the more violence. So wouldn't that create more food for them, more negative energy? I think it would. If you have read a David Icke book before, either one or multiple, one thing that's kind of disappointing about this book is it's a little bit drier than the last one. Human Race, Get Off Your Knees. As you can see, this is a well-worn copy. Parts were falling out of it. Basically had to, like, glue stuff back in. I spent a lot of time with this book. I read it absolutely cover to cover. There was a lot of dry parts in that, I'm sure, if you remember, especially when he starts listing off all the people in the Bilderberg Group and all the people associated with this oil company or that bank or that government, or you know, he connects so many dots that it's exhausting. It is just mind-numbingly exhausting trying to keep up. I can't even imagine the amount of research he does to connect all these dots. Like I said, this new one is even drier. I still have 10 pages left in the book, but I'm sure I know exactly what it's going to be. It's going to be like, yay, you know, love can save the world, you know, truth, vibrations, yada, 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 which is good. But to have one small chapter of that compared with, you know, 15 chapters of why the earth is going to hell in a handbasket by the powers that be, and we basically have zero control because we don't control the money, because money doesn't really exist. It's just numbers on a computer screen, yada yada yada. So anyway, it's a pretty dry book, but there is some good new information that that he talks about as far as like the economy and other financial things. And he mentions Barack Obama a lot in this. I mean, obviously, since Barack Obama had been in office for 4 years by the time he wrote this book. So one of the things, though, there's lots of repeat information. If you've ever read more than one of his books, he basically spends the first half of the book recapping what he wrote in the last 15 books. He could essentially have cut this book in less than half, and he would still have lots of good new information. I think, and this is kind of where I resonate with David Icke a little bit. I think he feels so misunderstood that he feels like he needs to overly explain everything way too many times. I do the same thing, and I get in trouble because of it. So I can understand that, but given that this is a review, I feel it's important to mention that he does repeat a lot of information, so you're not getting an entirely new experience by buying this book. And that's the other thing. It's $35. That's a lot for a paperback book. All of his books are expensive though. Like Human Race was $35. I think so is Tales from the Time Loop, the David Icke Guide to the Global Conspiracy. They're all pretty expensive. I don't think he sells them in that high a volume, so I guess that's why he has to charge more for them. Anyway, for as many hours as you get, as many hours of entertainment, if you want to call it that, as you get out of reading the book, $35 is not that much. It's like it's probably taken me a good month, 5 weeks to read it. So yeah, you spend a lot of time. You get your money's worth. So don't worry about that. So yeah, lots of repeat information. Talks more about HAARP, DARPA, the dangers of vaccinations, euthanasia, again with the plans to cull the population, dangers of fluoride in the water. Talks about the TSA X-ray scanners and you know, how they're molesting little kids and little old ladies and making little old ladies take off their diapers to go through the, or to get patted down or whatever. I don't know. It talks about the dangers of pharmaceuticals. He mentions one fact in here about how the reason they're not curing cancer is that there's more people making a living off from searching for the cure for cancer than there are people with cancer. I don't know if that's true or not. You know, how do you really find out something like that? I mean, you can go to Center for Disease Control, but when you really think about all the people that make money off from sick people or people with cancer, it's very possible, I would say. One of the problems, though, in at least Alice in Wonderland, or what was it called? The one that he has about 9/11, and it's called Alice in Wonderland and the World Trade Center Disaster. That one, at the end of every chapter, he lists all of his references, whether it be a website, a book, a magazine, you know, whatever. He lists all his references. His last two books, he has not done that. There's not in this latest one. There's not even a bibliography. In Human Race, Get Off Your Knees, there is a bibliography, but it's like two pages long for a 700-page book. So it's really hard to go see for yourself where this information is coming from. A lot of it, there's really no way to prove. So overall, this book, Like I said, there's way too much negativity, and especially since, for instance, I'm in the Army. He's really down on people in uniform. You know, we're not all just mindless drones, you know, doing the bidding of our master. My thoughts on our involvement in Afghanistan and Iraq and whatnot are really irrelevant. But the point is, like, we in the military know that if something is immoral or unethical, we're not going to do it. That's, you know, you defend the Constitution, but you don't just mindlessly go out and kill babies or whatever. So aside from that, even while reading this book, you'll start to, like, really be down on everything, because if you really take this book at face value, basically everything around us is designed to entrap us in the five senses reality. That may or may not be true, but if it wasn't for some of the things around me, some of the reading that I've done, some of the experiences that I've had, I would never have chosen to look beyond the five senses reality. Because I'm real big into, like, astral projection and dreaming and other sorts of spiritual endeavors. So it's not... I think he's overly down on stuff. Like, I swear there must have been 10 or 15 pictures about how aspartame is, like, one of the biggest poisons, and fluoride in the water. He has a picture of this jacked up mouth in there that apparently is fluorosis. I don't know where that picture came from. You know, I don't know that it was fluoride that caused that. Maybe this person never brushed. You know, there's just so much that you can't prove or disprove. So in other words, there's lots of stuff that just makes you feel bad about everything in your life. Now, to some degree, that's not necessarily a bad thing if it causes you to change your ways for the good. If you're like, yeah, maybe I should stop drinking so much soda. Maybe the cornstarch is really, like, fucking up my brain, and I need to kind of get off that. I need to kind of clean up my system a little bit, get more into, like, organic foods, like, and, you know, get out and exercise instead of just, like, turning my brain off and just watching YouTube videos or TV or whatever. YouTube videos, I think, are actually really good because you choose what you watch, and it's kind of the community talking to the community, not necessarily Rupert Murdoch talking to the masses, you know. So I don't know, whatever. So the negativity is not entirely lost. Again, there's way too much repeat information in the book. He does have some really interesting views on religions. Again, he goes all the way back talking about the origins of religion, which is superb because a lot of people don't talk about the origins of religion. The movies Zeitgeist do a really good job talking about religion and finances and stuff like that. But he makes a really good example of, for instance, the freedom fighters in Egypt who, you know, were on the streets protesting for freedom, but then however many times a day they'd be on their knees facing the Kaaba because that's part of their religion. It's like they don't realize that where they're fighting for freedom, but they're not even allowing themselves to be free from their own religion. That's a really bad way to put it, but once you understand kind of the history of religion and its purpose for control in our lives, it's you won't have such a nice appreciation for religion. Anyway, I don't want to go too deep in this one because that's not really what this book or what this review is about. Anyway, one thing he says not to believe anything, and I'm not gonna read a huge long excerpt or multiple excerpts, but I just wanted to read this part because this kind of goes out to his detractors who are against him because they think he expects you to believe all this stuff. He says, the first step is to believe nothing and question everything that you think you know. Question everything that you have read in this book, too. What I've written makes no claim to be definitive, because there's always more to know. Nor will it be 100% accurate in every detail. How could it be in the suppressed and manipulated energetic environment that we experience daily? and when those in control are doing everything they can to block information that would expose them. But I'm very confident about the themes, and when it comes to what is happening with a global conspiracy within the five senses reality, the truth of this can now be seen in daily events. He goes on to say, I believe nothing. I have a perception about how things are at any point, but I don't believe it in the sense of the perception being so immovable that it solidifies into belief. There's only the way that I see things in any moment, in the full knowledge that there's always, but always, more to know. I think that's probably the best takeaway from this book, as far as trying to get a good grasp of who David Icke is and what he's all about. I think any good spiritual teacher, master, whatever, will admit that there's always more to know. That the more you know you don't know. The more you grow spiritually, the more you realize you have yet to grow spiritually. There's really no end to the journey. There are those that are farther along and farther behind, but in the grand scheme of things, really we're all the same. We're all one. And he's real good about talking about that too. Anyway, so last couple thoughts on the book. Again, there's no references. There needs to be references. Hopefully in his next book it'll be shorter and there'll be references that you can go back and check out. I don't want to sit there and Google every single name that he throws at you. And you probably sit there and read through 1,000 or 2,000 names. It's mind-numbing, the names that he throws at you, especially if they're like foreign names that you can't pronounce or whatever. And then after almost every name he has in parentheses, it says Rothschild Zionist, and just to prove his point that they're part of the conspiracy, part of the Illuminati, the bloodlines, however you want to put it, the shapeshifters, the reptilians, whatever. And another great thing about his books is his son's music. Gareth Icke is a fantastic musician. He wrote a really good song for the theme of Human Race, Get Off Your Knees. It's too bad I forget what it is, but I'll probably put it as a link in this video. And then he also has one called Remember Who You Are, based off this book, and it's a great song. Pretty fascinating music video too. Anyway, that's my review of David Icke's Remember Who You Are. Remember who you are, remember where you are, and where you come from. Remember.